Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 170 of Screw the Commute podcast. We got a very special guest. I've known this guy for 100 years, and he's a little bit different than our normal fare here. You're going to really love to hear this guy's story. His name is Ben Brooks. It's Major Ben, and I'll bring him on in a minute. Also, make sure you check out our podcast app in the iTunes store, and you can go to screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. It has instructions on how to download it and do all the fancy stuff it'll do. And then catch your freebie. I've got a freebie, a $27 ebook called How to Automate Your Business at screwthecommute.com/automate free. Screwthecommute.com/automate free. And this book has saved me millions of keystrokes, let me handle tons and tons of customers. So you'll really like it. Then also check out my mentor program, the Great Internet Marketing Retreat and Joint Venture Program, where it's the longest running ever and most successful in the internet marketing arena mentor program. And it's got some very unique features like your immersion weekend here at the retreat center and your scholarship to my licensed dedicated internet marketing school and one-on-one tutoring and help from myself and all the staff here. So nobody else can compete with this program. So check it out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. We'll have that all in the show notes. All right, let's bring on the main event. Ben Brooks is an international speaker, management consultant, and he was one of the first African Americans to enlist in the Pennsylvania State Police, and he rose to the rank of major, hence Major Ben. He defies the typical stereotype of the hardened state trooper. He can be very serious when the situation demands it, or he can be very warm and caring when it's appropriate. Through personal anecdotes, humor, charm, and passion, and his highly energized, interactive style, Ben is able to convey the most serious of messages. Ben, are you ready to screw the commute?
Yes, I'm ready.
How you doing, man? It's been so long since I've talked to you.
I'm doing well.
You're doing good, and what we're going to do is tell everybody what you're doing now, and then we'll take you back to those days when you were coming up through the ranks. How about that?
Yeah, well, right now I'm the director of security for a medical cannabis facility, and that's so after I did most of my consulting stuff, so that's kind of keeping me busy right now.
Yeah, I'll bet. I always ask you, did you catch any bad guys today trying to sneak out some product out the door?
No, we haven't had that happen yet.
Yeah. So let's take you way back to the beginning. Like even when you were a kid, what did you always want to be a state policeman, or what was it like growing up when you grew up?
No, well, I grew up in North Carolina
Okay.
during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. That was the furthest thing from my mind. Growing up in school, because recognizing that is an era of Jim Crow, a
Right.
lot of segregation going on. And quite frankly, the only thing that we could aspire to at that time would be a teacher or a preacher. So that
Teacher or
didn't work.
preacher?
Yeah. So the law enforcement thing never entered my mind. We saw police officers, but there was no real connection with them. We saw them as someone to be feared
Right.
rather than be coddled or respected.
And rightfully so at that time?
Oh yes, yes. We're in a segregated society. The only time we had any contact with it was when relatives or someone had run afoul of the law. But other than that, there was no daily or weekly interaction with them.
I see. All right. So then, how did you come up? Did you have jobs as you're growing up?
Well, I worked on the farm pretty much during my early years.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, I had a job. I was a school bus driver, and in North Carolina at that time, once you got 16, most of the bus drivers were students, and so I did
No
that.
kidding. You were 16 driving a school bus?
driving to school. Oh yes, that's what it was. And we didn't
I
have
never heard of that.
paid drivers. We drove the school bus, and they were paying us like $22.50 a month, which was okay. You see, because as a school bus driver, I was never late, so that worked out for me.
Wait,
But we did
22.50 a month.
yes, yes,
$22.50 a month?
yes. That was it. You
Oh
know.
my God. That's
And
not
the other work we did was work on the farm. We had a small farm, and we raised tobacco, peanuts, corn, and a little cotton. Or we would work for other people who were doing the harvest season. So those are the only jobs that we had growing up until I graduated from high school.
all right. And then what? Then what happened?
Well, I graduated from high school, and my buddy and I, Richard McDowell, we both came to Philadelphia because we wanted to uh, look for a better life. And so we came to Philadelphia, and we therefore in 1957, and so we were looking for jobs, and so we decided in early January of '58 that we would join the military. So we joined the army on the buddy system, and we went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for the first and second 8 weeks. And after that, I went to the 101st Airborne, and he went overseas, to engineering outfit. So I spent the 3 years as a paratrooper, and we both came out of the service in 1961. We came out looking for jobs at that time because I figured I had attained the rank of sergeant, and so I felt that I had some marketable skills. But lo and behold, as I went looking for many jobs, nothing was forthcoming. So in the meantime, we signed up for IBM school, and we dealt with that for a while. Not
Wait, IBM
recognized
school? What's that?
IBM, yeah, I was dealing with the early phases of computers.
Oh, I see. Okay. So what's IBM school? Was that
I, it was
intercontinental ballistic
it was
missile? You're a
international
missile
business,
technician.
the international business machine.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
that was the beginning of the computers, because they had the tablet wiring, the course that we had taken, and of course naturally the basic key punch and stuff. And so we dealt with that. But in the meantime, we were roaming around and trying to decide what we wanted to do. And so we had seen a couple of troopers on the expressway and kind of like the uniforms. And so we were riding out one day past the barracks at Belmont Avenue and saw the signs Pennsylvania State Police. So we said, well, let's go in to see what kind of excuse they give us for not hiring us. And
That's a good
so
good attitude there.
we went in. I remember First Sergeant Mays did the interview, and after we did the interview, next thing we knew, we got a letter to take the exam, and we took the exam, and then we were informed that we had been selected, and we then arrived in the State Police Academy on September 7th, 1961. At that time, as the two of the first African Americans to join the Pennsylvania State rank. So that's how that whole thing got started. Now, during my whole lifetime as a child, law enforcement was the furthest thing
Right.
from my mind, but then when I got there and I saw the opportunities, it changed everything, and it was a very good move, because I think it started, I mean, on a very, very long and lustrous career.
Wow. And so you changed your attitude about what law enforcement was about?
Well, I didn't have a negative attitude toward them. It was just neutral, because I couldn't say yay or nay because the experiences that I had with them were not on any kind of confrontational basis.
Mhm.
It was because my mom did some housework for a guy who was a trooper of North Carolina Highway Patrol at that time, Mr. Richardson. And so that's the only. There was a good relationship there because she worked for them, but in terms of any other interaction, there was none.
But she raised you good though, right? To not be
Oh yeah,
bad
oh yeah.
bad stuff, right?
Well, yeah, but it's interesting, and she was working there, and she was only making $3 a day,
Oh my
you know,
god.
which was crazy. Now she did a lot of backbreaking work, and to think back during that time, well, you could do a lot with $3, but just the idea of doing backbreaking work for somebody and they're paying such a paltry amount of
Oh
money.
my goodness. My goodness. Yeah, that's crazy. how long were you a trooper?
30 and a half years.
Wow, 30 and a half. You got to get that half in there.
Yeah.
So tell us some of your experiences there.
Well, one of the biggest experiences that we had is that in 1964, we had three of our troopers shot
Oh,
on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and that was very, very, very traumatic because these guys were running radar at that time, and they stopped the car from I think it was in Minnesota, I guess it was, and the three guys in there. So they'd asked for the operator's license. The guy showed the operator's license, asked for the registration. So the guy said, got out and he said, "Well, the stuff is in my trunk." So the trooper followed him back there, and he opened the trunk and pulled out a gun and started shooting. So he shot the one guy in the mouth, So he was in
okay.
rehab for quite some time. One guy was shot in the leg, and the third guy, ironically, was handcuffed to a tree. And like, well, was really crazy. So I look back at that experience, and I have my keynote address. Is that if your life has you handcuffed, let me share my keys. And I talk about attitude, self-esteem,
Hmm.
motivation, goal setting, and commitment. Now that grew out of that incident with that trooper because the question you ask, I'll ask myself: these guys shot those two guys, but they handcuffed the one guy to a tree. The question is, why did
Why?
they shoot the other two, and why didn't they
Right.
shoot him? They just handcuffed him to that tree. And I look at that, and that whole drama caused me to look at this in a very serious way in terms of how can I parlay that experience into something that's going to help people who are locked into a particular mindset, if you will. What kind of keys do we have that we can begin to unlock our potential?
I'll tell you what, something is very eerie right at this moment, Ben. My big screen is on the wall over there with the sound off while we're recording this,
Hmm.
and they're in California today. A California Highway Patrol officer was gunned down by a guy on a stop, and they were going to impound his vehicle, and he just reached around, got a high-powered rifle, and there was a big shootout and killed one of them. Man,
Wow.
yeah, that's pretty eerie that that came on the same time you're telling me that story. But
Mhm.
tell you, what, I'm very pro law enforcement. And I used to always want to do a ride along, but now I'm like, man, uh, there's so much anti-police sentiment and they're targets. It's I don't want to go anymore, but I'm very pro law enforcement. But it's
Well, I
dangerous.
think I think I think if you get the opportunity, take advantage of it because you really don't know what happens unless you are there. I would say that as you look around the country right now, and you see law enforcement officers getting involved in shootouts and things like this, and if you think about 99% of the guys out there are really good officers, but sometimes you get somebody out there who may not follow the rules or
Hmm.
regulations. And some of these people sometimes create animosity among the citizenry.
Right.
Many of these officers who are shot and killed, you look at they did nothing to justify the bullet that they took, but
Right.
sometimes they took a bullet because of the aberrant behavior of somebody that they didn't even know,
Oh,
and that
geez.
that's
Yeah.
that is the tough
Oh,
part of
man.
it because when you are there, you never know what's going to happen, and so you have to always be on your p's and q's because
Right.
right now with the proliferation of guns as we have right now, you got to be super super cautious when you are stopping
That's
somebody.
for sure. So 30 years there, then how did you transition into the speaking world and consulting world?
When I was a young trooper, I spent maybe let's see, from 61 to 1976, pretty much on the road. Well, no, 61 to 67, because I came off the road in 1967 and I joined about six other troopers and a major and a lieutenant to start the Pennsylvania Crime Commission, which has now morphed into the Pennsylvania Commission of Crime and Delinquency, which is
Wow.
a big agency now. So that meant I was doing a lot of research type stuff, away from the road. And when I left that detail, I came back and I started doing criminal investigations. And I did criminal investigations up until 1976, at which time I was promoted to corporal, and I went down to one of my stations as a patrol supervisor. So that meant I was off the road at that time because basically what I was doing is inside work at the desk as an administrator.
Hmm.
From the corporal now to sergeant, went to another station, and at that time I was a station sergeant, which again was responsible for the administrative part. So there was very little contact that I had with the patrol function. Well, when I got promoted from sergeant to lieutenant, again there was another administrative post. When I had transferred from Chester County, Pennsylvania, up to in Philadelphia, I was there for from 1980 to 19 Philadelphia in 1980 to 1982, when I became the first African Americans to be promoted to the rank of captain, and at the same time assigned as a troop commander. So all of these were administrative functions for me. When I did troop commander from 1982 to 1987, and when I was transferred into when I got to, in Harrisburg, I was in charge of the affirmative action contract compliance, which was another administrative post. In that capacity, then I developed the sexual harassment policies and procedures, and also did training for the Pennsylvania State Police. I was also involved in an interagency task force doing affirmative action in relation to hate crimes and diversity. And that was a pretty interesting piece. Then I guess early on, I'd gotten involved with the American Seminar Leaders Association.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
And I worked with the young lad there, going up to New York, back and forth. And through the American Seminar Leaders Association, he advised me to take a look at the National Speakers Association. So I came down and I joined the National Speakers Association with the Liberty Bell chapter in Philadelphia. Well, that was quite
What year was that?
interesting. Let's see, that was 1970. No, that was 92, I think it
Oh, I was
was.
like, I joined in '91, so it's pretty close.
Yeah, 92. Marilyn Sherman and I came in
Hmm.
together. So I came down with joined the National Speakers Association, and then I recognized there was a great opportunity, and I had my first keynote address, a recommendation by Ralph Archibald,
Right. Yeah. Yep.
who played Ben
He
Franklin. He was
played Ben Franklin for years.
a
Yeah.
very dear friend of mine,
Is he still
and I
around?
no, Ralph
He
passed away
passed.
about 2 years
Okay.
2 years ago.
Okay.
Ironically, when Ralph got married a few years ago, his wife played Betsy Ross.
Oh
So that
man,
was
that's
that
funny.
was quite.
Mhm.
So then I joined the National Speakers Association, and like I said, '92, and it's been a great ride for me because I did a lot of speaking, training, and consulting.
Right.
When I retired from the state police in '92, January '92, I retired, and January 22nd, I had my first gig. And basically, that has been a great career because most of the work that I've done has been through word of mouth. Did very, very little official marketing, if you
Right.
will. Yeah,
Right.
because people say, "Well, I heard you speak here, and I heard you did this," and so it was very, very interesting. For example, I wound up doing sexual harassment training for the entire Department of Transportation for Pennsylvania. We did the entire Philadelphia Police Department in that area in 1994 and 1997. So it was a great ride for me because we had a tremendous group that I was working with, and we got some great reviews. And it was one of those things that sustained my career up until I kind of wound down.
Well, I'll tell you what. I remember hearing you, and it was very inspiring. And yeah, it's no wonder you got so much word of mouth. So in those years, now I know you took this. You were in retirement. That you weren't looking for this job you had now, right?
No, I wasn't looking for it, and I made it clear. But I thought, here's a situation where I had spent my career on the other side of the table,
Right.
uh, for the enforcement part up there. And then to look at this and recognize the potential here, because here's an opportunity to deal with the medical part of this business because there are so many people out who are hurting, who really could use the services that we are providing. And so there was a seismic shift then from law enforcement to policing, then, which has to do basically with the quality of life. And so that was the thing that propelled me to take a look at that. And also, and part of what I do is like community outreach, is to look at how this thing impacts or benefits people, because everybody we know is a either a caretaker or caregiver. And when you can talk to someone who and you share with them that basically you have an antidote for the opioid crisis, that's very important to for someone who has been racked with pain, and you can talk to them about having a pain-free, non-addictive existence. That was very, very appealing to me.
Yeah, and I saw some statistics last night that it's just unbelievable the number of opioid pills or opiate pills that are sold in this country. I mean, it was, I don't know, it was something like so many billion. And, and even some little crappy communities in, you know, places where they had 3,000 people, they sold 100,000 opioid pills. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
something's going wrong somewhere. I'll tell you that.
Mm,
So,
mm.
so it's great that you could do that. So, boy, I'm thrilled that you could take the time to talk to us. Very inspiring story. I mean, I didn't know about coming up in your youth and all the stuff you had. Driving a bus at 16. I mean, that kind of
Oh, yeah.
cracks me
Oh,
up. I
yes.
never heard of such a thing for
Mhm.
$22.50 a month.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I didn't really.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, that was interesting because even as a child growing up, and we would work on farms and stuff like this, and basically, it was like $5 a day.
Yeah, really. Well, that was more than your mother
Yeah.
was making even.
Yes, and yes, it was. And they talk about pay equity during that time. Women who were doing the same jobs as men at the time, guys were making $5 a day, and women were making $4 a
Oh
day.
man, jeez. Wow. So, hey, I mean, they wouldn't get much out of me. I'd probably pass out in the field. So, but anyways, thanks so much for taking the time to tell your inspiring story and all the great things you did in law enforcement and inspiring people around the world and the sexual harassment stuff. I mean, you lived 3 or 4 lives already helping people.
Well, when you're out here, you begin to recognize that your job basically is to do what you possibly can for humanity, and if that's not where you are, then I say, what's the point?
Very well said. Very well said. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. I know it's going to inspire a lot of people out there to step up and do the right thing. So thanks, Ben.
Okay, thank you.
All right, catch y'all in the next episode. See you later.
Okay.